There's no right to poverty. No one should be poor in this very rich country of all the gold we have. Even underneath the houses that we occupy, there is gold. And let us all share that gold. Thank you very much.
We are going to make sure that the village business units that are being headed by the village heads, they receive these loans at a very, very minimum interest, which I am not going to say here, otherwise there will be a problem, but it will be completely close to nothing. All we need is for you to empower your village and make sure that you bring back the money after you are empowered. At the top and pay microfinance, our mission is clear: to provide access to finance and growth for the people who form the backbone of our economy. We recognize that true national development begins at the community level, in our village, growth points, townships, and small businesses. Through accessible and inclusive financial solutions, we seek to strengthen village business units, support income-generating projects, and help communities become self-sufficient, economically empowered. In line with His Excellency the President's Vision 2030 and the National Development Agenda, we remain committed to advance financial inclusion through innovation, investment, and people-centered solutions that leave no one and no place behind. Some will say, why are we saying these words? This microfinance institution that is being born today, we know where we came from as business people. We were supported by the President. We are not even ashamed to say it. It might be painful to you, but we are not even ashamed to say, all that you see, everything that we have achieved, everything that has caused this to happen, came from ZANU-PF. And the good thing about our president is he loves everybody, even his enemies. So even if you are the enemy to our president, even if you are the enemy to ZANU-PF, you're still going to access the loan, just to humiliate you that ZANU-PF is a bigger pocket.
My brother, Comrade Mnangagwa. Yeah, I'm just about to get into the gym, so I thought I'll just send you a video. You could explain that on this idiot, what's his name? Matinyare, whatever, Rutendo. So you see, this idiot, what he did. Akatanga utuka msangano. Abatanga utuka president. So I used to have a lot of respect for this guy. I would text him, I would call him, how are you? Chichi. They had to mtengera Land Cruiser 300 series. But ndakafunga kuti munhu ari kuzvi-offer market too much ngaita. So I wanted to first engage Commissioner Masanzi and say, munhu akaita basa ripi rakaitira musangano before I can acknowledge kuti ndimutende. I was happy to give him Land Cruiser and 250,000, some pocket change. Because I could see that this guy to Asha to Ainato, you know. No, he was aggressive. I liked him because I could see what I would try. But the moment you switch and flip, they know what Tom Teng is. Unomira nezvinhu zvako, kana ukamira nemusangano, utoya chema. A clever person would have come and say, wachivai, ndakaita 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the party. Verify ine superiors party munoudzwa ndikuda kutengerwa imba ye 500,000 kana muGreyston Park, ndikuda kana 250,000 Land Cruiser. I would go to the responsible, especially types of the chinamasters, because no one has the party, no one my lawyer, you know. I would even go to the principal himself and say, Muno chef, I don't need to hear have you heard about him? What? Yes, I've heard about him. Even $1 million, that's not a problem. $1 million I'd give him. But that's what first wasn't in this time you verify Mnangagwa anything in the shakutao. But manje uzotanga utuka ED manje the moment you go tuka ED tatopata pesa na hivyo. So now I'm desperate. We can't have gold anything. KT gave me a lot of money. And I called KT and I called the plaza panduka inda. Pandra sesi mari zakampa ma 7 million rands machi motikali zakamtengera. Pano uzalimo mtema kanenga out for life ndifana ora manchingo chika sa KT yakasvikopa kunet. But dai angaona kuti KT aneta dai akachinja akauya kwandiri. Zvikundi explainera. To verify. Would have helped him. Because kana ine zvakaita munhu wese anenge ashandira musangano. You know, it's outstanding. We must be able to say thank you. Because tisu ano musangano, tisu madai ado ano musangano. So now he thinks he can go on and on about my fake page. We cannot buy gold. We cannot buy is the biggest gold dealer. You know, I like the way these people talk about gold, my brother. You know, kana korogoza cha wrote was already gold rangu minus 5%, minus 4%, whatever. Even tangezifika tinopangwa pa tinogonotora gold real. It's just to that smuggler. First of all, in any country, there's a red market here gold. The world price is known. Exporting it to smuggling is not necessary. It's not like no poor double price. You know, kusafunda. Yeah, not maybe akafunda. Maybe let's say what exposure. Nenamo combination is when you share expose over what uromboka. It's terrible. Because urungofunga we can arushka pa Singapore airport and 4 tons of gold. Also, is not 4 tons. That's what I uchishika pepe msingapore muyamea ukawanikani bora kana remba nje kana 1 bullet is not put death sentence uvanze urushika pepe ne 4 tons the kg 4 tons the gold for you know you can just see what it's just the reasoning unongona the reasoning yacho so kana udoska mu Switzerland mbezo mavengerwa takaitwa nemarungu aya racist for life in the language barrier utanya so body chirungu antara zma language zo zve kwana French nanani usvika ipo ne private jet and why are you taking it bezo akutorina kana market dai ungatora this thing to Dubai so I'm talking about EK714 let's say that made a bit of sense because Dubai ndo kuna probably the biggest market of gold in the world. Switzerland unza kaenda Switzerland, you know, saka exposure kuti vaziva private jet ikaenda maintenance inoenda 3 months down ichigadzirwa but chinjo flam like they don't know ndege yakabatwa zvakazodai yanga ine gold so it's just ignore that idiot, just ignore him, you know, just ignore him rega me ana centra anopuwa because akatopanduka kudara saka hapana munhu achamba kana cent so it's fine, just ignore the idiot.
You know, the one thing I appreciate about the video that Wicknell Chivayo has made now is that he sets the record straight on some very important issues. And I know he's insulting me here, but I can tell that he's emotional. And he's emotional because they feel like they've lost a very powerful and a very valuable voice for their agenda to try and extend the president's term limit. He's also straightened out the fact that I've done some very important work. It's unfortunate that he says that I've done the important work for ZANU-PF, but I've done some very important work for Zimbabwe and Zimbabweans by removing sanctions on the country. And you can hear Wicknell saying he wishes he could have given me a car. He wishes that if I had financial problems, he could have given me money, and he would have even been willing to part with $1 million. Why would he want to part with $1 million for somebody who has done nothing? It's because I've done a lot. I've done a lot for the country. I've done a lot for ZANU-PF. The only problem is that Wicknell believes that I have turned because I wasn't getting money. That is not true. I have turned because I've refused to support the constitutional amendment without a referendum. I've refused to support this current president getting an extension of his term limit because I don't think that he's done enough. I think he's done okay. I think he's done mediocre, but I don't believe that he deserves a term extension. But even if he was to get a term extension, I'm saying it must go to referendum. Nowhere did I ever insult the president. Nowhere do I insult ZANU-PF. I've simply gone on to question, what has the president done? How many roads has he built? Has he put water into our houses? Has he fixed the railways? Has he done what he's supposed to? Does the gold of Zimbabwe benefit us, or is he misappropriating it? That's what I've said. Those are not insults. Then talks about Kudata Gure and says that Kudata Gure bought me cars and gave me a lot of money. The truth of the matter is that Kudata Gure never gave me a car. In fact, the car that he promised me never came in the whole 4 years that I knew him. But he did give us money to fight sanctions as an institution called Zimbabwe Anti-Sanctions Movement after the son of the president contacted me and said we must take the issue of sanctions to court after the United Nations came to Zimbabwe, measured the impact of sanctions and said that they were illegal. That United Nations came to Zimbabwe because of me. The lawyers till today have not been paid all their monies. There's about 3 million rand still outstanding to Simba Chitando and the South African lawyers who haven't been fully paid. Then I, the person that wrote the entire anti-sanction strategy, which government used, the person that got the United Nations to come, the person they sent to speak to the ANC and to get the ANC to start fighting sanctions with us, the person they sent to convince the whole world of sanctions on Zimbabwe, and the person who successfully got the Congress of the United States to come and measure the negative impact of their sanctions and write a report to Biden asking for the sanctions to be removed, and the person who brought African lawyers and the AFBAR to start fighting sanctions, they never paid me. But I don't have a problem with that. My issue is I refuse to be a part and parcel of people that are violating human rights, jailing opposition, and burning down their offices for not supporting the extension of this constitution. Kuda was still committed to paying me, but I started refusing to support CAP 3.
2 nights ago, witnessed the people who gathered at the Rainbow Towers lying to each other, celebrating the retirement of one of the most dangerous person who ever presided over our judiciary. They were lying to each other and telling each other what they wanted to hear at that gathering. Vakaungana vachireverane nhema, vachirumbidzana zvokunyeperana kunzi aiwa iwe Luke Malaba wakarwa basa zvakanaka. Here is the perspective from those who know Luke Malaba's hatchet job that buried the judiciary of Zimbabwe as one of those that have been revered in the region and in the world. Malaba turned the judiciary of our country into a sword against opponents of Emerson Mnangagwa's regime. He is the man who reduced the Zimbabwean judiciary to become the platform of persecution of those who have been opposed to those who appointed him to become the Chief Justice. He would knife those who did not want to pander to his whims paakanga achida kuti adzvanyirire vanhu. Saone njalo ukuti vadala ngokuoni ukuthi uMalaba vamusebenzisa to oppress abantwana beZimbabwe. There is no doubt that those people who have had experience of his persecution as the Chief Justice would speak like the way I am doing today. Few years ago, Justice Erika Dewere, one of the judges who was impartial in the courts of our country, was persecuted by Luke Malaba for granting me bail on a matter and a crime that I did not commit. Luke Malaba is said to have instructed Emerson Mnangagwa to institute a tribunal to find fault against Erika Dewere, Justice Erika Dewere, to be fired from the judiciary.
kungonzi chete wapire Job Sikhala bhero iwe Erika Ndewere unofana kuti iwewe utikunyudze pfumo. Erika Ndewere was chased away and fired from being a judge for simply exercising her judicial role after she found no end reasons why I was supposed to be kept in prison rather than for me to be granted bail. Nasi uno ndopo unoona vachiungana paRainbow Towers vachinyeperana kuza murume uyu akanga akapenga, who has been persecuting even judges for delivering their roles and duties in the judicial delivery system of our nation. Erika Ndewere, up to today, she is suffering for no apparent reason, but simply for having granted Job Sikhala bail. What kind of a chief justice is that? Who would persecute his own subordinates for exercising their duty as a judicial officer? Mokwera makaungana pa Rainbow Towers muchirerane nema kuti murume anga akaoma. This man anga akaoma in perpetuating the oppression of our own people. Many judges have been living under terror of this guy. In my cases, I have to hear that Malaba akanga achitimi. We said before you deliver that judgment, the judgment yoni botanga ndaiona kuti manyora kuti kudi. This is the man who presided over the persecution of Emmerson Mnangagwa's opponents, using the judiciary as a platform of fighting political wars, which he was not part to. He is the person who was directly involved in my case where I was kept for 595 days in prison. I was kept for 595 days in prison under the supervision of Malaba. They would hold my luncheon meetings ku Chinese restaurant ku Milton Park. Akagara yena na Ziyambe na Virginia Mabiza. Could you just say kuti Job Sikhala Safaka Buddha, he is the enemy of the state? How would a chief justice label a citizen of the country opposed democratically so and constitutionally allowed in any democratic dispensation to the regime? Kumuti, he is the enemy of the state. They presided there, vakaita meeting chavo, vachirya pa Chinese restaurant chok Milton Park when I was in prison for 595 days. Vakativo, Job Sikhala is the enemy of the state. We must make sure that he doesn't come out of prison. Vakanga vachiva, sevachikafu vakanga vachinzwa. We have got eyes and ears on the ground of those people who do not support their nonsense to persecute other people. Akanzwa Malaba na Ziyambe na Virginia Mabiza vachita meeting pa Chinese restaurant ku Milton Park. Job Sikhala anofana kuti afire mujeri. A whole chief justice ndio amwakwena makaunganira paite vamuchireverane nhema panapa kuti Malaba akanga akapenga akanga achita zvomutemo. Mutemo wokwanu uyoyo wakadaro. A whole chief justice labeling a citizen of Zimbabwe an enemy of the state because he's opposed to Emmerson Mnangagwa. Hakuna zvinhu zvakadaro. The man who has destroyed the fabric of our judiciary since time immemorial in Zimbabwe is none other than Malaba, the worst chief justice ever to preside over the judiciary in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has had several chief justices since our independence. The first black chief justice was Chief Justice Enoch Dumbuchena. The jurisprudence he wrote judgments ake. They are reported in law reports all over the world. Go to South African law reports, you will find the jurisprudence which Chief Justice Enoch Dumbuchela created. Go even into the British law reports. You will find Enoch Dumbuchela's judgments during the period he was the Chief Justice are recorded. Kukazoya Gabe, Chief Justice Gabe. Their history is very clear on pursuing the judiciary to be an impartial arm of the state in our country. Even the one who many people have been criticizing, but who authored several jurisprudential judgments for the nation, our Chief Justice uyumdala ukuzoshayikawo Godfrey Chigausiku. These were the Chief Justices who knew what they were doing. Under the Chief Justiceship of Luke Malaba, political opponents of the regime suffered brutal incarceration like the ones that people suffered during the period of colonial regime. There is no difference between Luke Malaba, still reign as the Chief Justice in Zimbabwe, and the reign of the Chief Justices during the period of colonialism, who had been denying nationalists and freedom fighters their freedom. How many people have been denied bail and suffered brutal incarceration in our country? James Van Timber and the 78 Avondale, the Avondale accused persons, Vakagara 5 months in brutal incarceration in prison under the supervision of this so-called retired Chief Justice Wamanga Mchikwera Mchinyeperana pano pa Rainbow Towers kuti akaita zvakapenga mujudiciary yeZimbabwe. Blessed Mhlanga suffered many days in brutal incarceration. What kind of a judiciary is that which he presided over? Mazibaba Shanduko up to present is in prison. Generations Mazibaba Shanduko. Now kuti lavana vabhemi mpanje mokusnife glema konen vadai umalava vele wasebenza elizweni lethu so Chief Justice akula into esojalo vastampanje neglue wonyengerana kuti andeti nomukuza a man who destroyed. Do you imagine a man losing 2 years of his life like what I did in prison? This na mosha ndakapara. Gabuda mosha mosha yacho. Kushewa kuzama kudzamba. They failed to find anything against me. Apa manchegeta 2 years of losing 2 years of your life in prison. Pastor Makayo kapara. Nokuna kwa muna haigara matari. Nana ziyambe nana Virginia Mapisa kultom kaurisa se job Sikhala safi. And you think these are things that we must really take for granted. The only jurisprudence yakati serious nagana ne basa yokupenga ndiye kuti where are the V11s? He was no munhu wese anongoti nyangwe nomwana mtuku akangodai noti tipe ma V11. Tipe ma V11. No zvega zvakangogona kutaura. Vantu vanenge vachitotaura vachitomuseka. They will be laughing at him. Kutaura zvama V11 zvazvezvo. A man who persecuted me and many other Zimbabweans for their political beliefs, and you want us to take that lightly. Don't case chega chama V11. Chaitaura chia kuti uisa ma V11 iwecha misa uisa ma V11. A judge or a Chief Justice or a magistrate who transforms a court to a political platform is not fit and proper for the job. A magistrate a judge or a chief justice who gives his or her subordinates instructions to carry out injustice in the name of political correctness is not fit and proper for the purpose. A magistrate, a judge, or a chief justice who strive for political recognition in the bench, on the bench, rather than through applying the law, is not fit and proper for the purpose. That was Luke Malaba. Luke Malaba is the worst chief justice in the history of our justice system in Zimbabwe. A man who destroyed our judicial. There is a need for us to revamp and restore confidence in our judicial system in our country. Many opponents of the regime have suffered on the hands of Luke Malaba's administration of our judiciary in Zimbabwe when they have not committed any crime. And the main example is myself. Atogara madare uyu zima meetings avaita tine vanhu vanotinzwira nokutiudza achita zvima meetings zvezeve zvokuti Jobs kana tomukuvadza sei tomupanisha sei nokuti he is the enemy of the state. Munhu wa chief justice uchigara zvimatare nanazambe nana Virginia zamangati handizvizivi monga kunyerera ndakasingazvizivi zvese zvamanga muchiita muchikwera muchigara matare okuti motikuvadza sei vanhu imimo. You think I'm a fool? I don't know that. Wozi uri chief justice wechinyi? You are gone. Chienda unofudza ng'ombe tosungana mberi.